Hello, I'm Frost, and welcome to this video where we're going to be looking at the Therians, which are the NPC faction that comes with the Invasions DLC for Age of Wonders Planetfall. Well, the Therians, they are rather polarizing. You either love them or you hate them. There is no middle ground. They are essentially the furries. They are the new NPC faction that comes with the Invasions DLC, as I mentioned, for Age of Wonders Planetfall. And what we're going to do in this guide is we're going to have a good look at them. We're going to look at all the units. We're going to look at all the other elements that you get with this NPC faction. And before you make your decision too early, take a look at this video because you'll be quite surprised at some of the abilities of this faction. And it may just change your mind when it comes to the furries. So a bit of lore to start with, and I'm going to read this from the dev notes because then that will give you an idea of at least where they came from. So, born from a tragic experiment to save a dying scientist's wife from a ravaging genetic disease, the Therian project was meant to fuse stable animal DNA with humans that were afflicted with an incurable disease. Like all research that could enhance humans, it didn't take long for TerraTech to get their hands on this new technology, altering and transforming those who would pay, no cost too great, in attempts to perfect this new process. Society's outcasts were the first to suffer at the hands of these experiments, eventually forming a cult-like status after their transformations proved too radical to continue as part of normal society. So there we go, we have a subculture, and they became the Therians. So let's look at the units, and I have a whole bunch of them up here. And what we'll do is we're going to see their abilities and what's common amongst them. So here we go. We have the first ones. They're Prowler. These are your tier 1s, and they are your wolves. And they're kind of good all-rounders. You know, as you can see, they have both a melee with the Prowler swipe, as well as a melee with the biochemical shotgun. Now, the two items that are consistent across all Therians are their primal pheromones and Therian presence. Now I'm going to start with the second one, Therian presence. Now if I hover over this, you'll see that when adjacent to another unit, they heal at the end of each turn. So they are very much pack animals, and if you keep them together, similar to the Kyoko with their swarm shield, you keep them together and they will regenerate, which is kind of a really, really good thing to have. Then the primal pheromones is triggered when their when their vitality drops to 66% or less. So when they're in the last 2/3 of their vitality, then they will have their pheromones sort of do their thing. Now, these pheromones vary from unit to unit. So in the case of the Prowler, as you can see, we get a damage buff. And then as we move on to the other units, you'll see the different pheromone effects of each unit. So that kind of covers the Prowlers. So, good tier 1 unit. Then we move on to the bunnies, or the bouncers. So the bouncers are the equivalent to your Vanguard troopers. They got the dual pistols, they got good range, and sorry, my eyes keep getting distracted from these bunnies jumping up and down. They also have Therian presence, and they also then have prance, which gives them skitter and evasion. So, it gives you sort of movement buffs if their pheromones drop. Then they have good defense mode, and then they have this thing called bullet spin. And obviously the bullet spin is that they land. So they got another option called leap and bound, but with the bullet spin, they land and they start firing their weapons, and they just fire in all directions. And you know what? I like using it, even if it's going to hit my own enemies, because it's just fun to watch. So yeah, we've got bullet spin and we've got leap and bound, so they can get easily into a flanking position. So overall, a pretty good unit. And then obviously we've got 3 armor on them, which is pretty good going for base armor. And then we move on to the Sharpshooter. Now the Sharpshooter, which is the fox, what is nice about these is not only do they get improved Overwatch, as you can see here, which gives us a 20% accuracy bonus, which is really good for a sniper. They also have the 2 basic, sniper moves. They have the snapshot, which is a single action, so you can move and then do a snapshot. Or you have the precision shot, where you have to be static, you can't move, and you have to take the shot from where you are, which then obviously gives you a stagger bonus as well. Now, those are great, but then on top of that, it also has a healing shot. And with the range of the sniper, that is brilliant. It means you can heal at very long ranges and just keep your snipers at the back to either do damage or do healing, which makes them a really, really strong unit. Then they also have their own pheromones, which is Sly, and increases crit chance. So all in all, a really well-rounded unit. But the surprise unit is the Chemist. Now, the Chemist is this silly-looking squirrel, and yeah, he is extremely silly-looking, but he is so OP. It is beyond belief. This unit, if you have it, makes a big difference to your army. So what it has acorns. So it basically has grenades, and they call them acorns. But these grenades, the abilities they have, that they have the bio acorn, which does a ton of damage on an area of effect, and also does a status effect of stagger and poison, and it has a cooldown of one turn. So really, really impressive damage. Then you've got the slowing acorn. So if you want to stop units moving towards you, then once again, it's an area of effect weapon, and it deals slowed up to 3 turns on units. So that is good already. But then, adding on top of that, we have the healing acorn, which is also an area of effect weapon. But this time heals for 12 vitality and also dispels all status effects. So that is really, really powerful. So if you take the Sharpshooter before the Fox, that can heal at range, and then you've got this guy who can throw grenades or acorns that can heal in an area of effect, you start to get an idea that this is a really powerful unit. On top of that, it also heals as a part of its pheromones. So as you can see here, you gain 2 regeneration for 2 turns. So once again, pretty powerful. So I have lots of time for the Chemist. The Chemist is a really, really powerful unit. And then finally, we come on to the leader, which is your elite unit, which is your tier 4, which is Apex, which is some cross between kind of a lion and with deer antlers, and there's a whole pirate theme to this as well. So they're kind of supposed to be the good guy pirates. And whilst he does a ton of damage, that's kind of about it, to be honest. So his sword does good damage. It does a stagger effect as well. Ignores armor, which is also pretty powerful. So really, really good as a melee. His pounce is pretty good. It's obviously got a status effect. It's not as good as the carbon sword, but still, it does a lot of damage in 1 turn. You've got the single inspiring roar, which allows the Apex to heal and also boost morale for all units within a 3 hex range, which, if you're keeping all your units in the pack for the Therian presence, then that means pretty much all of your units. So that is really, really good. And then for his primal pheromones, he also basically gives +2 resistance to all damage channels, which is pretty impressive. So all in all, these units are something else. And on top of that, we can also get mods. Now I'll come on to the availability of all these mods and all these units in a minute when we look at the actual dwelling. But for the mods, you get enhanced lib augments, which is not only just for the Therians, it's any infantry unit, and they get fast movement, they get +2 resistance to kinetic, and also they get a +1 armor. We then have another one, which is Hunter's Camouflage. Now this can only be applied to infantry units. Once again, it doesn't have to be Therian. They get +2 armor, and they also get a crit chance, and they get flanking. And they get a bonus for flanking. So overall, that is pretty good. And then we have this tier 3 mod. Oops, I clicked on it. Now the tier 3 mod, this is only for Therian units. But what it does is those pheromones that only normally trigger when you're down to 2/3 vitality, you can now trigger them on command. Now it's only a once per battle, so you'd need a unit to be able to regain your action points if you wanted to use it more than once. But also you get a 30% buff to your damage. So this is a great thing to put onto your Therians if you can afford it, and if you've got integration, which we're going to come on to in a sec with the Therian dwellings. So all in all, these are some good mods. So what we're going to cancel out of here, and we're going to go quickly to the dwelling. There it is, right there. And then you're going to see, so if you're at peace, then you get the Prowler and the Bouncer, so you get the Wolf and the Bunny. We're going to come on to the DNA Injectors in a second, so I'll come back to those. So that's for the peace. Then once you reach the friendship, then you get the Sharpshooter. You get the Therian ally insignia, which I hadn't mentioned before. Now, what this does is it means you can apply this to units that are not Therian in your army, and then they get the benefits of Therian presence. So they start healing when they're in the pack with other Therians, and you get a +1 shield. So that's pretty handy. Then Hunter's Camouflage we mentioned. I will come back to Black Market Connections in a sec. This is a doctrine. And then we have the Chemist as our for friendship as well. And then if we scroll down a little bit further, then we have the Apex, and for that you need integration. But it also gives you Might of the Therians, which we mentioned before. As you can see, these require quite a lot of influence. So obviously the Shakan get bonuses to influence. The Celestian Secret Tech gets bonus to influence as well. So these are some things you want to bear in mind if you want the Therians to be en masse in your armies. So the two things I need to mention, one was the DNA injectors. Now this affects your commander. So if we go to your commander, and if we take him out of his vehicle for a sec, there we go. What we can do is with our DNA injectors, we can turn our commander into a Therian. So we can have him as a bouncer, we can have him as a sharpshooter, and we can get him as a chemist. And as you can see with the bonuses as well, you know, the mods that you can put on, 27 AoE damage, that's pretty impressive. So something to bear in mind, and it gives you a chance, to play the Therians as a unit, that's going to constantly be there if you want. So that's pretty cool. And then finally, let me just double check. I'm pretty certain we can't, I've got some other commanders somewhere. Where are they on my map? Let me just find them quickly. There we are. I'm pretty certain we can't assign this to other heroes, but we'll double check. Let's just unequip that and see. Oh no. So yeah, we can, any of our heroes, we can assign the DNA injectors. So there you go. You can have a whole bunch of Therian heroes if you want in your armies. And then finally, that just brings us on to Black Market Connections. Now, Black Market Connections is a doctrine. And it is a good doctrine to have, especially when you get to late game, because what it does is it gives an extra 15% of all energy from selling a reward as Cosmite. So what that means is that if you, for example, got a weapon as a reward, you get the opportunity to sell it. And so if it was 15%, if it was 150 energy you would get for that weapon, then you would get 15% of that. So that's probably not a good example. Let's say 100 energy, it makes it a little bit easier to do the maths. 100 energy, that means you would normally get 15 Cosmite bonus if you took that as a reward with the Black Market Connections. Which when you get to endgame, Cosmite is something you're always desperate for, and it's a good thing to have. And there you go. So that wraps it up for the Therians. My personal opinion of the Therians is, and most of the other NPC factions, I'm not too bothered about getting integration. But for the Chemist especially, I think the Chemist gives you some really, really good, abilities as a unit. And then I think the Therian Presence as a mod to put onto your units as well is very, very powerful. So I can highly recommend it. And that wraps it up for the Therians. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please give me a like. You can dislike too, but don't dislike me because you don't like the furries, okay? That's not fair. And then finally, please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want to receive notifications, as I do release sci-fi based content on a regular basis. A lot of Planetfall, but not just Planetfall, I do other things as well. Alright, and finally you can catch me on Twitch on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Saturdays is Planetfall night, Wednesdays can be a variety of different games. Alright, that's it for now. Thank you for watching, until next time. Bye!